Thank you very much. We feel a little bit like a boy band or something up here with these stools and these microphones, but Tom, you're a musician. Do you want to...
All right.
You want to serenade us? Hello, everyone. I'm Ben, co-CEO of Dezeen. This is Tom and Roberto. Lovely to be here in New York at Haute Living's NYC's first anniversary. The topic of the talk today is the future of design. That's a big and slightly intimidating topic, but we'll do our best. I thought to start off with, being here in New York is fantastic. I just come back from Venice. We were in Milan not long before that. It's the first time that the kind of design kind of calendar has really kicked into a gear again after COVID, a period of obviously immense hardship, difficulty, but also conversations about the future and how everything has changed and will change, and this kind of seismic moment. A lot of that was about, maybe we don't need to travel around the world to design fairs anymore, but here we are again. To start off with, I wonder, for both of you, I'll go to you first, Tom, whether that's here in New York, ICFF, for example, or in Milan. What's your feeling? Has there been a change? Are things profoundly different from how they were before, or is it kind of business as usual, back to how we were before?
I'd say similar but different. We've got, everybody thought everything would change, whilst you were all in lockdown, and of course it hasn't. We're all back, on the road, as you just said. What was interesting in Milan was, designers, the carnival, as a marketing and entertainment game rather than business. Milan was always the place where you went to do business, and now it's the place where you go to get the new sensations in design. And that's become kind of really immense. And what's interesting is that people are complaining that the big corporates are in on the game. Google was showing. I mean, what are Google doing in a furniture fair? Dior, Hermes,
a lot of the fashion
Louis
brands,
Vuitton.
yeah.
And everybody had a palazzo, which was, used to be unique before. You used to go to a palazzo and think, oh my God, this is amazing. And of course, now that everybody's got a palazzo, people are going around saying, oh, well, yeah, there was nothing new. And of course there was. There was a lot of newness, a lot of stuff, a lot of, nostalgia, looking back and reproduction of things, and a lot of people, back on the road, from Asia, which they weren't last year, from America, from Australia, a lot of Brazilians, Ukrainians. It was quite incredible. But, I'm seeing, design becoming, more general interest, where it used to be niche interest, and a lot of people complaining, weirdly. But that was always the case. What about you?
I could say that it was not a big changement, but a big evolution, I think. I saw a lot of quality. I didn't saw new things that I could say, okay, wow, something new, completely new. But I saw a lot of new qualities coming, more consistency, even from the small brands. And not only the big brands. The big brands, they became so wide, so big. They have big booth. They show really big muscles. But on the other side, there's so many young new talents growing up and getting a new quality. And I think this is very important to have a space for those brands to be more aggressive in terms of creativity. Because if I look at the big brands, they are a little bit settle down, just going on in the comfort zone. That is good, I think, for those kind of business. But on the other side, we need the fresh, coming from the bottom, pushing, and I'm sure that from those small brands can come a lot of creativity, even from young designers, not old people like me. So I'm very positive. And I saw in Milano a lot of people, a lot of these people, that they want to emerge, they want to show themselves, they want to be part of the game. So hope this will be more and more in the next years, in the future.
And to go to your point, Tom, about the kind of infiltration of the fashion brands, the car brands, the tech brands, do you see that as a kind of threat to the kind of more traditional design disciplines? Are they kind of drowning out the furniture, the lighting that Milan was kind of built on?
No, not at all. I mean, I think it's really interesting that Mercedes might think of Milan as a playground to show off their new interiors and talk about it. I mean, the only real problem for the small brands and the traditional brands is the cost of everything. Where there was rumours that Louis Vuitton were paying $1 million for rental for a palazzo, right? So you get into this position where your hotel room is $1,000. The place you're trying to rent might be $1 million, and you're squeezed out from that perspective. But if you're a design firm, you should be creative and find another way of doing it. Come by, bring your bus or something. So I think it just forces you into a state to be more creative. And there's a lot of people that complain in the design business, but they were the same people that were complaining that nobody was interested in design 15 years ago, right? So in the end, it's like, if you don't like Milan, then go to Copenhagen, because that's really nice as well in the summer. So it forces you to think of new ways of doing stuff, right? And it's general interest, which is great. It's great for Milan, which has suffered a lot in pandemic, for instance, and it's become a hot spot for art and fashion and design. It's nice to see it all mixing up together, actually. Yeah.
And you exhibited at Salone at the fair. The impression I got at Milan that the city was as busy as ever. I mean, maybe busier. The fair was smaller this year. What was your experience of that like? And I suppose, what do you see as the kind of the role of the furniture fair, the traditional trade fair in the design world in the kind of years to come?
Well, it was interesting. I'd kind of ignored the fair for 20 years because I felt it was too restrictive and it was too formal and it was too concretey and the town was more fun, right? But after 20 years, you kind of start realizing that the carnival and the festival of design is amazing for marketing, but actually for sales, it's not so brilliant. So we were able to sell it as a kind of counter movement to go back to the fair and show and actually take orders. And I think for Milan, if the fair doesn't exist, then everything else is just fluff, and everything that happens in town is just a holiday on business expenses, right? And the behavior of people in town is like locusts. They come in and they drink your champagne, they eat your peanuts, and then they just go to the next party. They haven't looked at the stuff. There's so many people that they can't see the stuff, right? So to go into the fair and go into a more formal selling environment almost is like, okay, this is what it was about originally, was a trade fair, and then everything came as a cherry on top, and now the cherry's taken over, So it was kind of interesting to be back in commerce rather than in entertainment business, right?
I think there was a smaller fair, a bigger show, but there was a lot of energy, and there was less people than June last year, but the people was more consistent. They were buying. A very horrible word, but is the truth. They were more interested in what we were showing, and they were involved in the business. And this was, I think this was good, because and what was important for me is that after so many years now, after the COVID period, we can feel that we missed this moment. Because it was a moment we meet together, we speak together, we meet all the people all around the world, we listen to the question. Basically, I think design is an answer to questions. But if you don't listen to the questions, you don't know the answer, how to answer those questions. And it was a moment we speak together, we meet. Sometimes we party too, a lot.
A bit too much, maybe?
Yes. I get a couple of kilos every year made basically by alcohol. And it's a good experience. But I think the experience this year was good because I see the young people, I don't remember, I'm almost 30 years doing Salone. And I saw the new generation of designers coming from the schools, guys coming from all the Europe, even some new people coming from China, for example, coming to Salone to experience this moment. And for those guys, okay, a party is a party, and it's good. But on the other side, they come to experience what does this job means, what is their role, what is going to be the future role, because we can't be the designer for, I think, more or less we have to disappear, thank God. And I think they have to understand which kind of vision they want to, what kind of a, I remember when we were young, and I remember your Tibet chair in Cappellini, or things like that, and we were dreaming a world, and now is the time for those guys to dream a world. And we have to prepare this world for them, not for us.
I'm still pretending to be young, okay? So.
Come on.
And do you think that's happening? Like, is there like a younger generation of designers kind of pushing through? What do you think is exciting? What do you think? You mentioned that the kind of established brands are maybe coasting a bit or kind of doing the same old. Where do you see the kind of exciting developments in the design industry?
At the moment, they are enjoying alcohol, but I mean, things are changing, are evolving. You say, we still feel young. But on the other side, these guys have as different world. They speak about NFT, they speak about AE, they speak about environment, they speak about things that we were not talking about. So they have a longer vision than we have. I don't feel old at all, but on the other side, I respect the young generation because they are carrying new values that are more interesting than our values. When I grew up, they were only talking about luxury. They were only talking about hotels or things like this. And today we listen to this guy more worrying about the world, the change, the climate, and so on. Some of them they are just wearing a green coat, but many of them they are really worrying to give a different vision. And I respect those people, and I think in a couple of years they will be mature to express their own a vision, and I hope that we'll be able to be part of this vision too.
That kind of leads on to one of my key questions that I have for you guys, which is, I think for me, it's difficult to think about the future of design without also thinking about the future of the planet, and we're kind of confronted by the kind of climate crisis every day, and increasingly so. What do you think the future of the design industry is in that context? I mean, it's an industry that's in the business of producing stuff, shipping it around the world. How can the industry kind of adapt in the face of the climate crisis if we accept that, maybe we need less stuff and maybe we need to find ways to minimize or even have a positive impact on the planet? How can you square the kind of industry as it is now with what maybe it needs to become? Tom?
The small benefit of being in interiors industry is that it's not the type of fast consumption which is the biggest problem, like single-use plastics for water or transport and the rest of it. I mean, what's kind of interesting in terms of particularly the digital revolution is that the means of production are becoming more automated and more miniaturized. So got access to high-tech manufacturing locally, right? So there will be an evolution towards that, I think. There's a big resurgence of interest in local, just generally, whether that's food consumption, the rest of it. That interest hasn't translated into how people behave, but it should do eventually, partly because of trade barriers, partly because of the cost of moving stuff around. So there'll be commercial pressure. I hope there'll be political pressure as well to consume and to make more locally. But the best thing we can do is really make things with a permanence in mind. Because even things like recycling in the end, end up using vast amounts of energy to do and end up with a materiality which people struggle to pay the price for something which performs less well and looks less attractive, right? I mean, as designers, half the job is also explaining why some of these things which may not look immediately as appealing are worth buying. For instance, communication is a big deal, which I know Dezeen's been involved with. But ultimately, I think it'll be a combination of becoming more local and also becoming more technological, and then there'll be a role for new materials, but also the better use of existing materials as well.
And do you think the consumer is actually kind of ready? Do consumers genuinely want kind of more sustainable products? Is it about the price? Are they prepared to kind of pay for it at this stage?
I think no, absolutely not. But that's why government intervention, international rules become so important, whether that's in protecting the forests or forcing consumers to do stuff. The most obvious example of where that happened was with LEDs, which you have to remember 15 years ago were not wanted by the consumer or by the designer, by the way. They thought it was ugly light. Mm-hmm. It was very expensive light. It consumed less electricity, but nobody wanted it. So combination of government legislation, particularly in California, followed up by huge amounts of investment by corporates to make the things cheap enough for people to buy, and then designers just come along at the end and make it a bit prettier and make it more acceptable. And that worked in terms of forcing people to consume less electricity. So, I mean, the most important thing is government intervention to make sure that the playing field is level, I think, yeah.
And do designers have a role to play in that? Is it just a case of waiting for government, the politicians to get their act together, or is there something proactive that designers, companies can do to have a positive impact?
I think we have to design in a different way. In our studio, we are putting some rules. When it's possible, we try to have 3 rules. Durability. Our impact in the world is very small because our trade is not so big, so we don't have so many big responsibilities, but in any ways we have to be responsible ourselves. So we have durability is the first law. So we try not to design something that has to be trash in a couple of months. Disassemblability is a very important thing because, like a very stupid example, if you have a T-shirt made by 99% in cotton and you have just 1% in polyester, for example, you can't disassemble the polyester from the cotton, so the entire T-shirt you have to throw away. And this is the same with the sofa or a chair or a table and so on. So we have to start to design it in a different way. And recyclability, so it's quite impossible for me to pronounce, because on the other side, when we disassemble, we have to be conscious how we work with the different elements. So in the studio, I'm growing up the guys in order to respect those rules whenever it's possible, and try to make this visible. For example, with Talenti, we are working a lot in this way, using only aluminum structures, disassemble every element in a very easy way, so this is not going to be a cost, so we can recycle every element. But we are doing this like for Poltrona Frau, we are doing this even for super luxury products. So it's not a matter of the product you are doing, but every time we try to work in this way in order that we are conscious that we are doing the best to produce products that are not impacting in the worst way. And they are simple rules, but if we grow up the new generation of the guys more conscious and try to use this kind of simple practical rules, they start to develop perhaps their own ones, and perhaps we are going to design products in a different way. It could be better.
And do you find the brands that you work with are kind of willing to embrace those rules? Do you find much opposition to that? I guess it makes maybe makes manufacturing more difficult. It maybe increases costs. Things like that. No,
I think this is another interesting thing. If you design in a proper way, you also control the cost. If you are a good designer, you know about the costs. So you're not. It's not something that you say, oh, it costs too much. Well, you have to know how much it costs when you are designing. Of course, you need a lot of years working, so you create your own experience. And at the beginning, the people was looking at us as, oh, yes, but it's out of our comfort zone. We produce in a different way, and so on. But now, even the brands, they know that it's important also to make a communication about, okay, our product is not only good, it's also impacting in a different way. As we check the SG, so they start to change. And of course, our role as a designer is to push and to try to help them to, but as I say, it's a matter of design. When we spoke about design, sometimes we think that a design is somebody that is painting in yellow or something. Design is something more deep for me, something that sometimes has many values. We have a lot of responsibilities that are not just the shape of a product. We have more responsibilities, and I think our role is to guide sometimes the brands in order they grow up in many ways, even in ecological issues.
Do you think like designers should get more involved in the whole process, so kind of less focused on the object and maybe more focused on, you know, supply chains,
if they pay
shipping,
more, yes. If they pay us more, yes.
and
pay my bills, huh?
And are people willing to? I mean, Tom, you're maybe in a position where you have your own brand, so you maybe have more kind of, you can have more control over things. So yeah, you give yourself a raise, and then can you kind of tackle some of these things?
You mean afterlife, or what do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose
transport.
I suppose turning the focus of the designer from the object to kind of bigger things that around that object, which have a kind of impact on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's back to the same themes, isn't it? I mean, we can impact, you know, how we transport things, which, you know, is a big, you know, big cost in energy and the rest of it. How we package things is something that we've done a lot on recently. You know, the amount of power that they consume, which is the LED story.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, the best thing we can do is make sure that things last forever. You know, the advantage of furniture that is good is that literally it will last several generations. I mean, I live with antiques, you know, and those have gone through 5, 6, 7, and my great-grandmother's cabinets, you know. So, you know, if you do your job properly, then you're probably in one of the sectors that has the longest lifespan for consumer products out of any of them, really. And so, you know, and also, given that I am old, thank you for pointing it out, I've seen the stuff come back. You know, I've seen it come back in the car boot sale for 50p, but I've seen it come back in the auction house for much more than I sold it for. And I've seen it also, you know, on eBay as well. So, you know, it's kind of interesting. You get better at judging whether something is actually not just durable from a materiality point of view, but whether it's endured from a style point of view as well. And then these things are cyclical, right? So, you know, I mean, it's kind of interesting to see your stuff in an antique shop, for instance, you know, which has happened to me. So I'm legitimate antique now, yeah.
And have you got, can you talk a little bit more about like what that is? What's the knack of creating that object that endures?
Well, that would be telling you my secret sauce, right? No, I don't know. You know, there's things that are fashionable and things that you can strip out the fashionability of an object, still make it stylish, and you know, try and get to the essence of its functionality, I guess. I mean, there's no real trick. You get better at doing it, and I hope. Oh, but you know, I'm not going to tell you. Jesus, you tell him.
No, I don't know.
Roberto, what are your secrets? Tell us.
What is?
What do you think? How do you design a product that endures? I mean, there's obviously the materiality, that it's well made, that it can be disassembled. But what about that? I guess it's a cliche, but that timeless object, the object that isn't just kind of fashionable at the moment.
Right. Well, you need to not do smart furniture, right? So
okay, yeah, that's one thing. Yeah,
that'll date it immediately within 3 years. You know, so that's one thing. What's yours?
I don't know, but I think fashion fades. Said Coco Chanel. That was not stupid at all. I think. Well, we have to try not to. I mean, I looked at my masters when I was in university. People like Achille Castiglioni or Vico Magistretti. They were curious. They were working on the values of what they designed. They was not trying just to replicate a sign. When those people was designing a lamp, when Achille Castiglioni was designing the Stylos lamp, was a monument of the minimalistic design. And then he was designing the Toyo, that is a ready-made piece of art. So it was the same person with a different design, different, style. I detest the word style because I'm not a stylist, I'm a designer, something else. But they were sharing the same attitude, the same research of values. I think when you work honestly in values, we have the chance to design something that is durable. If we look just on trends, it's like fashion. We use for a party and then we throw it away. So Zara is okay. We have billions of T-shirts that we throw away every season. And I think that we have to try to stop. I want to say that when I was young, started this wave of archi-stars and designer stars, and magazines were full of our horrible faces, not yours, mine, trying to be better than the normal people. And I think that if we try to be better as designers instead of like movie stars, perhaps we could do a more honest job and try to be curious. I am curious. Every time I try to understand to learn something more, and I try not to repeat a style. I know that it's easier for a magazine to publish and when you are recognizable. You know, you have you use a signature in a shape or in a way. For me, it's boring. I get bored by myself, so I try to be larger as much as possible, even with my belly. But I think that the new generation, I say, look at the masters before us and learn from their curiosity, and for sure work on the value instead of the shapes, and perhaps you can do a better job.
Mm. And at various points you guys both mentioned different technologies. I guess everyone gets excited about technology and the possibilities. Roberto, you mentioned like AI. Tom, you were talking about technologies that allow kind of local production and things like that. Is there a technology out there that you're kind of most excited about? And I guess conversely, is there one that you're most scared of in terms of thinking about the future of design and where it could go?
Well, I mean, you know the answer. There's only one answer right now, which is AI, right? So, it's coming
to both questions.
Yeah, obviously it's the opportunity and the potential for massive disruption, disaster, for all of our professions, and design being one of the very obvious ones that everybody's toying with right now. And, it's the speed of change which is dangerous rather than the actual technology, I think, because, I've got to go and speak in China next week at Alibaba conference. And the topic will have changed by next week, right? So, it's impossible to talk about now without knowing that in 2, 3, 4, 8 weeks, everything will have changed again in terms of the tools that you can use. So the speed of change is absolutely terrifying. And obviously, it's really quite fun, at the moment to work on that. But the implications on people's jobs, is obviously the big topic at the moment. And implications on all kinds of other parts of what we do is really kind of interesting as well. I mean, having said that, I remember when, Apple Mac came along and everybody became a graphic designer all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
So, you could have said that graphic design is dead when those tools became available widely, but there's still loads of graphic designers. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you can do it well. But I think it'll open up the field and make it much, much more difficult. A lot of people that spend years honing their craft of, SketchUp or SolidWorks, all of the tools, they suddenly find, those skills no longer carry the same, the same value. And, for your profession, it's the ultimate terrifying one because
we're in trouble.
Well, those tools are available right now, and there's a huge disruption happening already. So, creativity will change; it always does. But it's the speed of change which is dangerous right now. Yeah.
Roberto, would you agree?
Until I start my job by using a pencil, and now I'm using a IE. But I still my brain in my hands, guiding the pencil or posing question to IE. We are starting to IE in my studio, and it's funny. We have a lot of fun. My mother-in-law, she's an architect. She's very bad now, but she's an architect. And when I was designing with the first computer, she was watching me and say, "Oh, this is this is evil. This is the devil." She was drawing with ink pens and so on. And I say, "No, it's just a pencil more powerful." I think the new generation, they were going to use these tools very relaxed instead of us, and thinking about those tools like a powerful pencil. I hope, of course, I hope. On the other side, I think what you say about that everything is too fast for the human brain. Human brain, I think, is very powerful. It's still the most powerful computer in the world, but the changements are so fast that we can't go. We can't stand such a big changement in a couple of hours, and everything changed so fast that I don't know This is scaring me, not IE or computers or technology. Technology is just, think about what we can do now, for example, with surgery by distance, or what kind of opportunity they come for to help the humanity. But on the other side, there are things that are scaring me, of course. I'm not so confident.
And in terms of AI, you both mentioned kind of it as it kind of being this fun thing. Like, what's your engagement with the technology? Are you just kind of observing it? Are you using it? Are you experimenting with it? Like, what role is it playing in your work at the moment?
Well, you know, image making, you know, ways of generating, you know, words, obviously, but, you know, mainly making images. It's not, you know, sophisticated enough this week to really manipulate materials, you know, to the point where you can have them engineered and outputted right now. But, you know, it's like I say, it's a matter of weeks or months before that becomes, you know, available. You know, there's people working on all of these tools, right? So it's in a primitive state right now, and you can use it, you know, definitely for, you know, creating, you know, environments to place your things in, for creating crazy zoomorphic objects, for looking like Zaha Hadid or looking like Wes Anderson kind of movie set.
Yeah.
You know, you can do that really easily, right? But, you know, in terms of trying to input things and get the results that you want, it's still not great for what we do, but it will be in a couple of months. I've got no doubt about it whatsoever. So, you know, the people at risk right now, and, you know, are probably the photographers that we use, you know, for instance, and, you know, I've generated some pretty ugly portraits of myself just to, you know, and you know, we've generated backdrops for you know, for presentations, and we've used it actually, you know, to do some, you know, do some architecture as well. But like I say, at the moment, it seems to really default towards Zaha Hadid the whole time, which is not what I'm trying to output. So, you know, just give it a bit of time to, you know, to
You mean
to
whatever input you give it, it gives you Zaha?
Yeah, roughly, yeah. So, yeah, no, but it's learning all the time. It's scraping more images off. So it's, you know, it's after us, and it's definitely after your job before mine. Just saying.
Yeah, probably true. I mean, at the moment, I've asked ChatGPT to write articles, ask questions. It's primitive. It's great at marketing copy. If you ask it to write some marketing copy about something, it will find the information about it. It will write it in a really concise way. So yeah, I think there's definitely a kind of threat there, and it's only going to be a matter of time. We need to wrap up at 7, and we're almost there. Before we draw the conversation to an end, is there any questions from the audience for either Tom or Roberto? Don't be shy.
They're shy.
Okay. If not, then I just got one more question to end on, which is this talk of people losing their jobs and AI, a little bit kind of pessimistic. Like generally, and maybe it's going to be a pessimistic end, let's see. But generally, are you optimistic about the future of design? Like, how do you feel it's kind of dealing with these challenges? You feel energized that, you know, we're going to kind of move forward to a great new age, or are you thinking, you know, it's the beginning of the end? Roberto, you first.
I have to be optimistic. Otherwise, my wife start to complain. She you know, because when I complain, she says, "Oh, you always complain. You're old." Okay, so I have to be. I have to cheat, even if I'm not. I'm optimistic. Yes, I have to be. We have to be. Otherwise, we are pessimistic. So it's not possible.
Tom?
Well, you know, I mean, I spent a lot of time, you know, nostalgic or you know, bitter that I hadn't lived in the 1920s to see modernism, or lived just after the war where there was all these possibilities in new materials and the rest of it. And we're just landing right now in a time where everything is shifting really fast, right? So, you know, in that chaos, and I actually quite like chaos, there will be opportunity, but you've got to be really fast and really smart to catch it. And it's just, I do think, I feel authentically excited and terrified at the same time, which isn't, you know, a bad feeling. It makes you alive, right? But so there's a moment in time where, you know, we're witnessing some kind of history happening, And that should push out opportunity. You've got to remember that, that there's a labour shortage. I mean, in the UK, that's a big thing right now. So we might have to retrain as nurses or something rather than designers. But there's definitely going to be possibilities that were not possible before. And I think that, alone is something to look forward to. The thing that's terrifying is more how artificial intelligence is going to crack your password to your bank account, or the crime. If I was a criminal, I'd be seeing a land of real opportunity right now. For instance, I'm considering it, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, that you're not.
Great. All right. Well, on that optimistic note, thank you very much to Tom and Roberto. Thank you to Haute Living for having us, and I think there'll be some drinks for the next hour or so, so enjoy the rest of the evening. Thanks, guys.